Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at some of the changes on the 8.10 PBE server. So I'm going to specifically look at some of the proposed support changes. Now, that's not on 8.10. They said that's going to be in the future, but they just posted about it today. Then I'm going to talk more specifically about some of the ADC changes because a lot of people have been asking me about that. And I'll talk about all of the changes overall a little bit, but those are going to be the things that I'm most going to point out. So keep in mind that this is from the PBE server, so that does not mean that all of these changes are actually going to go through. It's just kind of food for thought just to get people thinking about ideas. But be sure to watch my actual patch notes release that I only, publish after the real patch notes come out. And that's going to be 100% accurate what's actually in the patch notes. I just started doing this series. This is the first episode, actually, every other week when there isn't a patch, just to keep you thinking about League, about some of the changes that are going on behind the scenes, some of the thought processes and philosophies, that Riot goes through. So PBE stuff every other week on weeks when there's no patch notes. I'll try to do it on Wednesdays every week. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing, you can always find timestamps in the description, and I'll also have a link to this Google Doc in the description as well. So if we look at this, and this is from a tweet from Meddler about proposed support changes, the main thing that he talks about are, he says that the healing and shielding stat is too strong, and that was introduced back when supports had a lot less gold, contributes to power, multiplication of stats, rather than an AP ratio, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what this basically means is, yes, I agree with that. Shields in particular are too strong because there's not anything right now to mitigate shields, like Executioner's Calling for healing, and they scale with resistances. This is what I talk about all the time. So basically, if you shield somebody for a 300 shield and they have 100 magic resist, it actually takes 600 damage to break that shield. That's something that a lot of people don't understand, and that's not common in a lot of games out there. Like StarCraft, for example, if you look at like the Protoss, their shield is different from their armor. You have to get different kind of upgrades to give their shield damage mitigation. It doesn't come stock on the character. So that's something that's different in League. The easiest solution to this is just make sure that resistances don't affect shields. So basically all damage does true damage to shields. Just anytime anyone damages somebody with a shield is true damage. So that way, no matter what, a 300 shield always blocks 300 damage. And that would be much, much easier to balance around. So yeah, that would be a huge nerf to shield champions, but just give them a buff. You know, if you need to give Janna an extra 50 base shield on her E or something to make up for that, that's fine. But that would mean that when she's shielding like huge tanks on the front line, that they aren't unkillable because all of a sudden that 300 shield, because it stacks with the plus healing and shielding stat too. So for example, if you have a 300 shield and then you get, plus an additional, you're shielding someone who has 100 magic resist, so it's going to get doubled to a 600 shield. Now when you get that, plus 10% healing and shielding power, that extra 30 shield that you would get for 300 all of a sudden turns into plus 60 shield because, it scales after resistances. And then it has extra additional scaling with AP. So if you look at someone like Janna here, there are just too many multipliers on plus healing and shielding because it has an AP ratio as well, right? So let's say you have your 210 base shield here. Let's say that you have 100 AP and plus 20% healing and shielding. How that would work would be you would take the base number, that 210, then you multiply by the AP ratio first. Okay, so you have 100 AP, that's going to be plus 70. Okay, now you multiply by the 20% plus healing and shielding times 1.2. Now your shield is 336, and if you put that on a character, like I said, that has like 100 magic resist like a tank, then it's going to take twice as much magic damage to actually break that shield. So now you're getting into crazy territory where it takes like 672. And so it has triple scaling. It scales off of AP, it scales off of plus healing and shielding power, and it scales off of the resistances of whichever target that you shield. So that's triple scaling, and it makes it really, really difficult. Whereas damage goes the opposite way, right? So if you were to try to do 100 damage to somebody who has 100 magic resist, then you would only do 50 damage. It would reduce it by 50%. And so damage has to work against resistances, but shields naturally work with resistances. And so adding on an extra stat that gives plus healing and shielding to something that already works with resistances, to something that also scales with AP, is just too much. And that's why Janna has been super strong. She's been strong throughout most of League's history, but particularly since they introduced this stat in the fall of 2016, she's been really, really strong. So I think that they're right that it's too strong, but they're talking about all this stuff like they don't know what to do. They're like, well, we might change the AP ratios. We might change the base shields. Just make everything true damage to shields. That's it. And then balance around that. And that'll make it so much simpler, so much more intuitive for people. It's like, oh, it's a 300 shield. Okay, it's going to block 300 damage. So I think that's just a lot easier, especially for newer players, because so many people don't understand why Janna is so strong. You know, I get asked all the time on the Janna, how can I win with Janna in silver? How can I win with Janna in bronze? She doesn't do anything. She doesn't hard carry. Yeah, she does, because of the scaling on her shield like this. And so it's just not intuitive for a lot of people. They don't understand it. And that's what makes Janna very frustrating, because people think that she's not doing anything. But in fact, she's doing a lot. It's just a lot of unseen power that has to do with the math that goes into her shields. So anyways, yeah, I think fixing that probably a good idea. I don't think you necessarily have to scale back the plus healing and shielding stat. Maybe. I mean, unequivocally, let's just throw this out there. Enchanters are the strongest right now, and they will continue to be the strongest. But it's not just because of the plus healing stat. It's because of the way that tank supports work. Because a lot of other roles poach their items, right? So a lot of junglers take Locket, they take Knight's Vow, now they're starting to take Zeke's Harbinger. It just never ends because the items are so cheap and so easy to pick up for other lanes. And so that gives them a much faster power curve and more overall power in their game. And so that's the problem, is that tank supports are weak because other lanes steal their items and they have to nerf those items, right? Which indirectly nerfs the tank supports. But the enchanter items don't get poached by other lanes, except for Ivern, and they just nerfed him into the dirt. But, like, you're not going to see a top laner getting Redemption most of the time, right? You're not going to see a mid laner getting Ardent Censer. You might, if it's like a Karma or something, sure. There's a couple of corner cases. But those champions aren't really taken over. However, when you have things like Zac that's getting Knight's Vow, when you have stuff like Trundle right now that's getting Zeke's Harbinger, like these really popular picks in the meta, at least in the pro meta that we're seeing at like the mid-season invitational that's being played on patch 8.8, then that creates a lot of problems. So the real solution to this that I've talked about a ton is just to create a stat that's called support power, and it does not, like, the items do not get their full benefit until someone gets a tier 3 warding item. So until you get, you know, whatever, I forgot what the name changes are, like Eye of the Equinox or Eye of the Aspect or, you know, a tier 3 item, then it doesn't work. So the Zeke's Harbinger, the active where you partner with somebody, wouldn't work unless you have the tier 3 support item. The Knight's Vow, the partnered thing, would not work unless you have a tier 3 item. The Redemption active would not work unless you have a tier 3 support item. So it would still have all the base stats, but the other stuff wouldn't turn on unless you had a tier 3 support item. And so that means that other lanes would not get those items because it's too expensive. Because now, the whole reason that they get those items is because they're very cost efficient, right? Because they get to shortcut and say, hey, I don't have to buy a 2800 tank item. You know, I don't have to buy a Dead Man's Plate, which I think is 2900. Instead, I can just buy a Knight's Vow. It's going to give me, you know, similar stats when I'm near my partner, and it also adds this extra protection. Or I can buy this cool locket for 2300 gold. So that's the draw of it, is that those items are so cheap. But if someone had to buy another, you know, 2,000 gold item to access that, and they don't need that because they can't benefit from the gold generation very much in lane because of the mechanics of how those support item works, and the base stats aren't that great, and they're not going to be using the warding that much, then they're just not going to get it. Right, and so that's really the key. But supports have to get that anyways, right? It's good for supports. You would be encouraging them to do what they should do, which is get a lot of wards, right? So it's good for supports because they need to be warding a lot, but it's bad for other lanes because it's just not going to be cost efficient. Boom, problem solved. It's that simple, right? Why don't you just do it, right? And then that, because they're doing all these things to dance around that. Like in this patch, they said they've added in like a limitation to where you can't get a jungle item and a support item, because there were some champions, I think like Evelyn, who was getting like a Frost Fang or something in the lane. So they realize this is a problem, and they keep nerfing the gold items on supports, and they've tried this like wonky partnered system like Zeke's and like Knight's Vow, thinking, okay, well, no solo laner is going to get this item because you're not near your partner and it's not good enough, you know, to get this. But just do it. You already have systems in the game like this, right? Like, you already have Titanic Hydra, and the way that you balance that so that ranged champions don't abuse it is you said it has to be melee only. So certain items only turn on when certain conditions are met, right? It's already something that's in the game. So why not just make it, like, on support items as well? So I don't understand why this is so hard for Riot to figure out. But anyways, I think ultimately that's where they get to. Hopefully they get to it within the next year or so. We'll see if they figure that out. But that's kind of been the problem they've been wrestling with, is other lanes poaching their items. So yeah. Anyways, reliability of defensive tools. Now, I disagree with this one because it says defensive tools, particularly those on Lulu and Janna, are significantly more reliable and forgiving than the offense tools used against them. I would say true and false. Like, yeah, I think that Janna is relatively easy to play. I think Lulu's actually pretty hard to play, and I think that the win statistics bear that out. She doesn't have a high win rate a lot of the time. You know, she's okay. She's usually about like 50% or so, but her ranges are very close. Well, I guess she's a bit higher. She is about 50%. None of these supports are really that far out of line right now, honestly. It is a lot of enchanters, though, so I do agree that enchanters are really strong, but I think it's primarily because of their scaling off of the shields and the heals. But yeah, I mean, sure, is Janna's ult really easy to use? Yeah, but is something like Talon just like hopping over a wall and just slamming his hand on the keyboard and one-shotting somebody, is that easy to use too? Yeah, it is. Or is like Fizz just hitting a fish on somebody and they're instantly dead? You know, regardless of the defensive items that you have, once he gets to 3 items, sure. So I think there are lots of pretty simple offensive abilities that are very effective that enchanters can't really do a lot about once champions get so much power in their kit. So I disagree that, and there are really easy to use like offensive characters too that just have point-click abilities. Like, there are tons of very effective champions like Malzahar, something like that, that really don't have a lot of skill shots. So really, this is not a question of defense and offense. This is a question of skill shot versus point-click. And I think it's okay to have both of those types of things in the game. I don't think everything needs to be a skill shot. It'd be interesting, but I don't think this is a philosophical or structural question about offense versus defense. I think this is a question of skill shot versus point-click. So I think he's a little off on this. Now, adding in more risk-reward to Janna or Lulu, sure, I like that. I mean, what I would do to Janna, you know, something like this, just make her the ultimate peeler, right? So knock back some of the power on her shielding, knock back some of the power on her healing, on her ult, especially, because that's way too high. And this comes from someone who plays a lot of Janna over the last few years with a really high win rate on her. So I think Lulu's not really a problem right now. I think she's fine. I don't think she's picked a lot. Okay, hopefully that doesn't demonetize this video. We'll see. That was just like some chill jazz in the background. But hopefully that's not enough sound to demonetize. I guess we'll find out because I'm not restarting. So, anyways, make her CD cooldown on her Q lower so she can do the tornado more. I think that's the coolest part of her kit. It's really interesting because it can stop a lot of other movement spells. So, make it faster like it used to be so that it triggers faster, and then just a lower cooldown on it. Just make that really a cornerstone of her kit. You could even, if you want to, make it compelling to put more points into it. But I think that's one of the biggest skill expression things in her kit. Remove a lot of the hidden power on her W. They've worked on this some. They've tried to toy around with her, like having this like passive movement speed and things like that. That's part of what makes her so strong, is that she's just really fast naturally, and it's not any kind of skill. It's just free movement that she gets. So I think just cut the tomfoolery with that. Give her another passive. Maybe if she disables somebody, like actually uses her tornado or her ultimate to disable people, then she gets some kind of buff. Something like that. I don't know. But I think some kind of passive that goes around her peeling, whenever she peels effectively, then she gets empowered somehow. I think that would be cool. And then just remove the extra movement speed on her W, change her movement speed to a normal enchanter movement speed, you know, like 330, something like that. Get rid of all the movement on W. If you need to give it some additional effect, that's fine. Maybe lower the damage on it. Its damage is still kind of high. It's kind of troll damage. You just spam it in lane as a point click. It might be cool if it was another knockback, kind of like the tornado. That was just like a point click that just like knocked somebody back just for a little bit and did not as much damage, but then she would have 2 knockbacks, 3 with her ult. You know, that might get a little on the too hardcore for peeling, but I would rather see that. Just take away the hidden power and just say, look, she is the knockback disruptor champ. She peels people off, and that's what she does. So just something like that I think would be cool. Is just take away some of the damage on it if you have to, remove the free movement speed, and just make it something else that peels a little bit better. Her E, I think a good way to fix this is still have it shield, but only give the bonus AD after the shield breaks. Because one of the big things right now is you can just put this on your AD carry, and you don't even use it to protect them or shield them. You just put it on them for the extra damage in a fight, so that their crits hit harder, or so they take a tower faster. So there's so many times where you're not even using your shield to shield somebody. You're just letting the tanks go at it, you know, up front, and then you're using that shield to increase the damage on your AD carry, or you're preemptively just throwing it on your Master Yi who's running in, so he does a bunch of extra damage. So you're actually incentivized in a lot of cases, because you lose the AD if the shield breaks. You're actually incentivized to put it on someone where it's not going to break if you want the extra AD. So I think that's kind of awkward and weird from a design standpoint. Like, why does she give this like free offense on a tool that should be used defensively? So I think that giving bonuses after it breaks, so you're incentivized to put it on someone who's actually in trouble, and then they get some kind of extra power after it breaks. Now, maybe they could even change that off of AD. Maybe they could say it gives them bonus, you know, armor or magic resist after it breaks, or it gives them bonus movement speed after it breaks. That would be really interesting, so that, you know, it allows them to escape, or something like that. I think would fit more thematically with her. She just kind of randomly gives AD on a shield. I don't know. And that's part of what makes her really strong. Part of her hidden power is she gives a free 40 AD to your AD carry when you just put a random shield on them that you don't want to break, you know, in a fight. So it's kind of weird. And then I think her R, a good chance to balance this is lower the cooldown, take it down to like 120 seconds from 150, make it to where it doesn't give any healing over time, but instead gives out a shield, so that makes her very clearly a shield champion, rather than a healing / shielding champion / like AD buffing champion, you know. And this would knock everybody back. It does kind of the same effect as it does right now. Knocks everybody back, and then instantly gives them a shield that kind of matches your E shield. I think that would be cool. Then you won't just use it, because right now, like, you can randomly use it just to heal your team to full while you're sieging. So maybe you took a lot of damage, or maybe you're like trying to do a Baron, you're taking a lot of damage, you can just press R and heal your whole team, you know, to full. So I think that just applying a knockback and then instantly giving everybody a shield or something like that would be useful. And if it was on a lower cooldown, that would be good too. And so that would encourage you to use it actively in a fight. And, you know, you could even say, like, maybe it puts the shield up on someone that you've already shielded. I don't know. Something like that. But just giving everyone some kind of shield, lower cooldown, so once again, you can use it to knock people back if you want to, so she can do her peeler thing. So I think just making it to where she's the ultimate peeler, you know, lower cooldown on the Q, lower cooldown on the R, something else with the W that has better peeling, and then you just remove the free speed that she gets, rework the passive to where if she peels people, she gets some kind of bonus, and I think that would give her a very clear identity. You pick her to peel. You don't just pick her because her stats are insane and she's good in every comp. Okay. The other thing that Meddler talked about here was item efficiency for supports being too strong, and I just talked about this. I really don't think that's true. I think the problem with this is that it's true relative to other champions in the game, right? And you really, really don't want to go down this path as a game designer, because right now support is still the role that people disrespect the most and like to play the least. So you want people to play support. You want people to want to play support, right? So that your queue times are lower. So, because if you run everyone off of support, if you do the types of changes he's talking about here, and you get people to not want to play support as much, like he's talking about increasing the price of pretty much all support items across the board, because he said supports get a lot of gold right now, a lot more gold than they used to. And I don't think that's true. I think the problem is that these items get poached, like I said, by other lanes. So if you just limit it to where other lanes won't buy the items, so that Vladimir doesn't buy Shirelia's, you know, so that Gangplank doesn't buy Targon's, Zac doesn't buy Knight's Vow. If you just limit that with the support power stat, where you have to have the tier 3 ward item, it would fix so many of these problems. And what you have to look at is, yes, it's efficient, but supports still get less gold than other roles overall. A lot less gold. A lot. So if you look at like a lot of games, I mean, here, let me just look. I can look real quick. Add some numbers to this here. I didn't like pre-prep this, but now I did get a lot of kills in this one. So this one, if you get a lot of kills, it kind of skews the data a little bit. But look at this. You know, I still had 6 kills, which is a good amount. I mean, that was more than 2 other people on the team. I don't look like I have a lot of gold. I've got 12k right now. It's the same as everybody else. Look at the support on their team. So when you're behind, I was actually ahead, and I got a lot of kills. I got like 6 kills and 16 assists. Look at this poor Lulu over here. She has 10k gold. That's way, way less than everybody else on the team, right? I don't know exactly how much that is over here, or like what 10k is. I mean, let's just look real quick. You know, that's about 23% less gold than the lowest person on the enemy team. That's way less gold than the jungler, who had a lot of kills. Like, the problem is not that supports are just rolling in gold. You know, they're not. If we look at this ranked game here, look at this. I had 23 assists. We were the winning team. I only had 1 kill, but that's a lot of assists. I had 5,000 less gold than the, you know, than the highest person. I had 3,000 gold than the least person, right? Then the jungler, who still doesn't get as much gold as other lanes, right? And he died 8 times. You know, and I still have way less gold. So he's dead wrong about this. I don't know where he's getting his stats, but supports are not just rolling in money. Every single game you look at, whether I win, whether I lose, and if you look at the enemy support, they always have a lot less gold. You know, this person has like a third less gold. This Leona does, especially if you're really far behind. So if you're not getting all the towers, you're not getting all the barons, then you're definitely going to be really far behind in gold as a support, right? So this one, I mean, this Ezreal was particularly bad at CSing, so yeah, my gold is somewhere kind of close to his. But he didn't get a lot of kills, he didn't get a lot of CS, but I'm still behind him. So I don't think that there's a lot of merit to what Meddler is saying here in terms of support having too much gold relative to other lanes, because that's just not true. And so if you want supports to have a similar threshold of power, if you want them to have 2 completed items when other roles have 2 completed items, it's going to have to cost less gold for their items. I mean, there's just mathematically no other way around it. And you want it to be that way. You don't want supports to have as much gold as other roles when they don't have to CS, right? Because CSing is a big part of, you know, earning gold in League of Legends. So you want them to get some gold to be, you know, close to other roles, but at the end of the day, they should have a little bit less gold, but they should have a similar power level. And so I really don't like the idea of making support items a lot more expensive, because that's going to lower their power curve. That's going to make it feel less impactful. People already feel like they don't have enough impact in the game of support. People constantly come into my channel and say, how do I win a support if my AD carry is awful? How do I win a support if I'm in silver or bronze? How do you win if you don't play a carry support like Brand or Zyra? There's so many people that still don't believe that supports are really important. Now, yes, there are some top level people that do, right? So like Apto has famously said, I don't remember when, but within the last year, that he thought the support was the most powerful role. Skara, every time on his patch notes, talks about why support's overpowered, right? In professional play, I think that I've seen like Afromu win MVP of games and things like that. So like really top level people understand that support is very important and very impactful. And, you know, some of them will argue that support is too powerful. But the vast majority of the League community does not believe that. They don't understand why supports are strong. And so that's why, you know, I think they've come up with these items that are very high impact active items, like Redemption, like Locket, like Knight's Vow. Supports have some of the coolest, most interactive items in the game, like the Zeke's Harbinger. You know, like they just got Shirelia's back. They just got the Ghosts back. So Banner of Command. So there are so many cool items that make support feel unique and interesting. It's like, okay, you're not going to have a lot of kills, but you're going to have a lot more buttons that do cool things, right? You have all 4 of your abilities, and now you have 3 item actives that do really cool things too. And so that adds extra skill expression. It's like, yeah, I might just be pressing, you know, shield as Janna, but I'll also have to time the redemption correctly. I'll also have to figure out, like, you know, which other support items I want. I have to use Mikhail's correctly to try to cleanse the CC. So I'm trying to work with like 7 different buttons I'm supposed to be pressing, not including, you know, the summoners that I have. So that adds a little bit of extra skill expression to the kit in a role that, you know, sometimes if you're playing an enchanter, you're not going to be getting a ton of kills, right? You might be peeling rather than doing something offensive. So it makes it cool, it makes it impactful, and those items have to be cheap so that supports can actually get them. So that supports will have, you know, when they have 3 completed items, the other roles will also have 3 completed items, assuming that everybody is performing similarly in the game. So I think they really don't want to go back to this like Season 1, Season 2 model where supports just bought all wards the entire game. You just buy 40 wards, a Philosopher's Stone, some boots, and maybe if you're lucky, an Aegis of the Legion. And that's it. Where you'd have like 1 item, boots, and all wards. They don't want to do that because it's not fun for a lot of supports. I wouldn't mind, but I think that a lot of people do think that it's fun to buy items and feel powerful, feel useful in a game. So I think this is a terrible design decision. Hopefully they kind of reverse this. You know, and they're looking to add more variability to support gold income to where there are more fail cases. I agree with that. That would be interesting. They said they want to like make people roam more. I don't think so. You don't want to do that. And I've talked about roaming a lot in the game. It's very dangerous, especially at lower elo, because your AD carry will die or they'll rage at you for not being in the lane. Or it just creates a lot of problems. So yes, roaming is very good at high level play, but it's already has a huge impact at high level play, right? So I don't know. Maybe on some champions you could make that a thing, but I don't like making that a structural thing that you need to do to get gold. And that would hurt a lot of supports that just aren't good at roaming. You know, like a Soraka or a Zyra, or just like these slow-moving, you know, supports that really don't want to be roaming around. And it would disproportionately help things like Bard and Alistar, which I know some people would like, but just buff up Bard and Alistar. If you want to improve roaming, just do it on an individual champion basis, rather than, you know, trying to enforce that is something that you have to do as support to be successful. Reducing the amount of power that supports give to others, that's what supports do. You know, you support. Like, I really hope they don't try to go towards this, okay, we just run 2 mages bot lane and they just fight over CS. Because structurally, you know, in a game with 3 lanes and a jungle, someone has to not get gold. Right? That's the thing. Unless you want to try to orchestrate and balance around like bot lane splitting gold, so which type of champions can operate on half gold rather than full gold, that's going to create so much raging and so many problems in solo queue. It's a terrible idea. Like right now, it's a fine idea because, you know, it's understood that one person is not going to be hitting the CS. Now, if they really think this is a problem structurally, back in the day, they should have made it a 4-player game. Right? They should have said, okay, you know, we've got 3 lanes, we've got a jungle, we're going to make it a 4-player game. And that would make it a lot more straightforward. But I think having that variability bot lane, right? Because support's one of the most versatile roles. You can pick a heavy damage dealer, you can pick a shielder or a peeler, you can pick a tank, you can roam, you can stay in lane, you control the vision. Like, it's a really cool and unique role that I have there. But one of the things about it is helping other people. Because if you're strong, if you're powerful, if you need a lot of gold, if that's what they want to go toward, if you need to be more independent, then that's going to create massive sort of balancing problems bot lane, and it's going to create a lot of psychology problems among the community when people have to fight for CS. So I don't think that should be a thing. So once again, this stuff is really far out there. It's not coming through, but these are just my thoughts on the changes. I think they have it about half right. I think they're identifying that there are problems with itemization right now. They're understanding that healing and shielding is a bit too strong, specifically shielding. There are answers to healing, right? You've got Executioner's Calling, Morello's, Thornmail, Katarina stuff, Varus stuff. You know, there are answers, but shielding is a bit more dangerous. You could also make it to where, like, Grievous Wounds also affected shields. So if someone has a Grievous Wound debuff and they get a shield, then it gets reduced by that amount. I think it should just do full damage to shields. And while we're at it, as far as healing goes, I think that Executioner's Calling is too strong against champions like Soraka. early on, and so I think that you should have to get the full Mortal Reminder before you get that benefit. That's what you have to do with Morello. That's what you have to do with Thornmail. You have to get the full item before you get the healing debuff. So I think just get rid of Executioner's Calling as an item. Just do some other item that builds into Mortal Reminder. Throw some more longswords on it or something. And just make the completed Mortal Reminder have the Executioner's Calling, and then nerf Soraka to compensate for that. Because right now, it's too feast or famine. Either the enemy buys Executioners and Soraka feels almost worthless, or they don't buy it and Soraka's overpowered. So I think just kind of change her around. I think she's really one of the only problem cases. Mundo and the champions like that don't become as much of a problem with healing and shielding until later. I don't know. Or you could come up with some middle ground where you have some intermediary item that costs like 1,600 gold that has the healing debuff on it and does something else. Maybe has more AD on it or something like that. Just not 800 gold is too cheap to counter a champion because you can get it really early in lane. Make somebody invest at least half of the value of Mortal Reminder, if not the full value, if you want that effect. And I think that would be much more balanced. Thank you, dear. What is this?
Quesadillas.
I say.
Made in the oven.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Fancy. So they're crunchy.
Okay. Thanks, dear. Them? Yes, I do. I'm just going to finish this video first. Okay. So anyways, I think they're on the right track. You know, I really hope they don't go through with this stuff. I think they're barking up the wrong tree here. I think that they have an idea that poaching is a problem, but they're going about it the wrong way. Anyways, so I know people love support on the channel, so I just wanted to bring you this news. I don't think any other content creators have covered this. It just got released today. So I just wanted to talk about it. So don't grab your pitchforks yet. I think they will find a solution. They were saying this isn't going to come into play until like 5.12 or 5.13. So I'm sure we'll hear more about it over time. But I think they do have some good ideas in there. I just think that ultimately some of their ideas are problematic, and I think they'll realize that and moderate it a little bit. Either way, support will survive. There will be good, you know, stuff out there. If they destroy the enchanters, you will still be able to go like AP champs or tanks or whatever. And I don't think necessarily they're going to destroy all enchanters. But anyways, it looks like they're specifically targeting Janna and Lulu. I think Janna does need something structurally to happen with her. I don't think the numbers are enough. But anyways, let's move on. Talk about AD carry changes here just for a little bit. I don't want this video to be too long, but I do want to cover stuff. So on the actual PBE here, I've kind of, it's sort of spread out all over these notes, but like the general gist is that AD carries are going to have less base armor and less health regen in lane. They're going to get a little bit more later. I think this is good, right? Because I think that right now trading is, it's better than it was really early in the season. And in the preseason, there was no point in trading. Everybody got Targons and just farmed off for like 15 minutes with tank supports. And that was kind of a fail. They've moved it now to where trading is a little bit more valuable. But people still have too much sustain with fleet footwork, with their, you know, just armor and stats and things like that early on. So you aren't seeing trading mean as much. You still aren't punished enough for taking a bad trade in lane. So I like that they're lowering base armor and they're lowering the health regen. The big deal about base armor is this is going to affect how much lane minions do to you, because people don't realize right now just how much minions do, and they do quite a bit, and they'll do a lot more with this. So 5 armor doesn't sound like a lot early, but when you auto attack an enemy AD carry, they're going to be taking a lot of minion hits back. And so now it incentivizes like intelligent windows of trading where the wave's thin and you just go at it before a bunch of minions stack up. It also penalizes people who get pushed into tower a lot more, because if you try to fight back, you're going to get the hit from all of those minions. So I think it's good. There's going to be a lot more fighting, a lot less safety in lane. I think your poke's going to stick a lot more. So ultimately, I think this is going to distinguish, better players from players that need to work a little bit on their trading, to put it politely there. So I think this is going to be a better differentiation between skill levels of supports and AD carries. So I think that's good. Okay, so the bigger changes. So stat changes, that's going to favor early game champs like Draven, Misfortune, Jhin, people who want to fight early, and this is going to hurt champions like Twitch, Vayne, like maybe Kai'Sa that need to scale up a little bit more. Which I think is kind of fair to an extent. I mean, Vayne's already not that great, but Twitch Twitch is still very problematic, and so anything that holds Twitch down a little bit more and delays his ascent to godlike status is pretty good in my book. Okay, so crit changes, they are hammering crit on this patch, like absolutely gutting crit. So if you look at the Zeal, this is the biggest one because it's such an early item and the percentage change that they're making is so massive. They're increasing the cost by 100 gold, and they're decreasing the crit strike chance by 5%. So that doesn't sound like a lot, is a lot, right? So you have 100 gold, 5 crit is worth 200 gold in value, because crit's worth 40 gold per percentage, right? So if you're thinking, well, that's not that much, you know, it's effectively a 300 gold increase off a 1200 gold base. So that's 25% extra cost, effectively. That's a lot. I mean, in the past, if you think about, there are some items, like Blade of the Ruined King pretty much fell out of contention, and a big part of it was it cost like 100 or 200 more gold on a 3,400 gold item. Infinity Edge came back and became a really strong item because they reduced the cost by like 200 gold on a like 3,400 gold item. So that, you know, if you're talking about like 200 gold on 34, you know, that's like a 6% increase or decrease in cost. This is a 25% increase in effective cost for this item. That is astronomical in League terms. I mean, League is a game of just minor percentages. Things that just get changed around by, you know, 5 or 10%. Those are really, really big moves on a lot of champions. So changing this to 25% loss of efficiency is massive, massive. So Zeal is rough. It's going to be rough. And they're increasing the price on all of the core items by 200. So that does matter, not as much as the Zeal. They still get their same amount of critical strike, so they didn't carry that through to everything. So, you know, it still gets 30% crit on rapid fire. But even so, you know, 2,600, or let me see, 200. That's still, you know, 7.5%, 8% increase in cost, which is a lot. It's not 25%, but it still is 8%. So that's pretty big. And they're doing that on every single crit attack speed based item. Even Phantom Dancer, which is weird because not a lot of people get Phantom Dancer. Like, the reason that Static Shiv and Rapid Fire are so good are because of their sort of passives down at the bottom, where Rapid Fire gives this extra 25% Energize interaction, and then this has the Energize as well. Once something gets energized, then you get this extra attack and it crits, and so you get this long range crit that triggers the Rapid Fire bonus damage on hit and triggers the Static Shiv and triggers Fleet Footwork. And then Fleet Footwork also has an energized stat where if you run around, so basically Rapid Fire Cannon, Static Shiv, and Fleet Footwork just have this crazy synergy between each other where you get someone who attacks really fast, does a ton of burst damage, does a ton of sustained damage, and has quite a lot of healing in the kit as well. And that's why you don't see something like Runan's Hurricane or Phantom Dancer as much anymore. You see Runans on people who have very special on-hit interactions, like Twitch, who can stack poison on multiple people. Kaisa had that, so it stacked up her E until they nerfed it last patch. There are a handful of champions. Anyone that gets Blade of the Ruined King would like this. So there are a handful of champions that liked Ruin's Hurricane, but that's basically why you didn't see that and why you don't see Phantom Dancer, except on a few like split-pushing type of champions. Like, obviously, you'd see it on Yasuo. You might see it on Vayne sometimes, but... So I agree with nerfing these two, but I don't know. I feel like, well, they are buffing Blade of the Ruined King on this patch. We'll talk about here in just a second, but maybe that warrants this. But I feel like they could have just left Phantom Dancer alone. I feel like it's not the problem here compared to some of the other items, but I guess they wanted to be consistent among all of the Zeal items. So yeah, Critical Strike, massive nerf to all of the attack speed crit stats. And then also to Infinity Edge itself. This is what I think is a really big nerf. So first of all, they're increasing the cost by a lot. And I don't remember, what is it on live? I think it's 3,400. Pretty sure it's 3,400. Yeah, so 300 extra is a lot. That's a lot of extra gold. And just like I said, I mean, the thing that changed this meta back in the spring of 2017, everybody used to get Blade of the Ruined King, and like nobody got crit, no one got Infinity Edge, even though I think that was a mistake. I think that crit was really good back then if you've been a long time supporter of the channel. The thing that really changed it was they reduced the cost by 200. Boom. Everybody starts buying Infinity Edge after that for the most part. So they increased the price on Blade of the Ruined King by 100 gold, and they reduced the price on Infinity Edge by 200. They reduced the price on the crit items by a little bit, and that was enough to make everyone build crit. So don't underestimate the cost of adding an extra 300 gold onto this. That's a lot. That's a lot of extra price. And if you look at what do they do? Let me look up the Zeal items just really quickly here. I think the Zeal items, they just decreased the cost by like 200. Now they've basically taken that back. They changed Rapid Fire to add that Energized thing at some point too. But yeah, 7.9, same thing. Combined cost. Okay, they added the Energizer in there. So they added the Energizer system, which that was a huge contributor too, if we're being fair. I thought they tinkered with the cost. Anyways, so the main point is that crit's going to get nerfed. It's going to get nerfed quite a lot. The new Infinity Edge is pretty bad. They're increasing the cost. Yeah, they are giving an extra 10 AD to it, which is 350 gold value. So technically, you know, it is relatively gold neutral. You're even gaining a little bit in terms of base stats. But the fact that it costs a lot more just really, even though you're getting the 10 extra AD, it's going to be tough to justify that cost. It doubles your crit strike chance, so you can't rush it anymore. It's going to be basically the same, though, or very similar. If you get any crit item first, which most people would get something like a Static Shiv first. So, you know, right now the standard is get BF Sword and then get Zeal, and then some people would finish Infinity Edge, some people would finish Zeal first, or finish Static Shiv first. If you finish Static Shiv and then you got Infinity Edge, it's going to be about the same crit strike. So you're going to get Static Shiv, that's going to give you 30. It's going to double to 60. On live, it gives 25%, I believe, crit strike, 20%. So you'll actually be getting a little more crit there. So instead of having 50%, you'll have 60%. Now, if you get 2 crit items, though, you're going to go over the cap, so you're going to be wasting stats. If you go, like, Static Shiv Rapid Fire now, you'll be at 100% crit with Infinity Edge, which I guess is good. So you're going to go over the limit there, because you're going to have 60 and then double to be 120%. So it kind of feels bad wasting those stats, but overall it does go to 100% from 80% off of that, so you'll crit every single hit, basically, if you have Infinity Rapid Fire Static Shiv. But now, instead of doing critical strike damage is increased by 50%, you get 20% extra true damage. So that's going to be better against tanks, but I think worse against squishies than a flat-out crit. Because 50% more damage, basically what it comes down to, that 50% damage gets mitigated. The extra crit damage gets mitigated by armor, though. So even if it's like a squishy that has, I don't know, let's do some math here. I hadn't thought about doing this until just now, but let's say it's a squishy that has like 60 armor. Okay, so that's going to block 37%. 37% of the damage from the crit. So if it's the Infinity Edge right now that does the 50% extra crit damage, you're going to get 37% of that blocked. So let's say that you were doing, I don't know, your crit. Okay, so what is that, 37%? Let me write that down so I don't forget that number here really quickly as we do this. Okay, so... Okay, so 37% of that gets blocked. Now, let's say that you hit somebody for 100 damage, it crits with an Infinity Edge. It would usually go to 200 damage, but you get 50% more on it, so it goes to 250 damage. So you get, 250 overall damage. Now, if you crit, you would get... it would go to 220 damage. I believe the way that it's worded is 20% of the critical damage. So yes, I think it would be your extra critical damage would be 100 in this case. You'd get an extra 20 true damage. So So the missing damage is 30 in that case, but the extra 50, so you're doing 50 extra damage off Infinity Edge there. You're getting 37% of it blocked, so we're doing times 0.63 is 31, so that's 32 damage instead of 20 damage that you would get off of your true damage there. So, you know, in this scenario, against a lightly armored target, then you would do a little bit more with the current crit off of Infinity Edge. But you also have to balance that against, you are getting, effectively, if you go the triple crit build, you're getting an extra 20% crit, because usually it stopped at 80, right? You'd get 30, 30, and 20. That'd be 80% crit. Now you're getting 100% crit. So that 20 extra crit times 40 value each is 800 value. So if you get this as like, you know, a third item, then you're getting an extra 800 gold value over what you would get right now, and you're getting the extra 10 AD, which is an extra 350 gold value. So you're getting like an extra 1150 gold value, but it's costing 300 more, so you're getting like 850 true value out of it. I don't know. It's close. It's close. So I think that crit champions will still be viable in the end. I just think they're going to be a lot worse early on. So certainly at like one item, you can't rush Infinity Edge. There's no way you can do that anymore. When you get static plus Infinity, it's actually pretty close, but Infinity costs a lot more, and you're not going to get that scaling off of the crit until you get to your third item. So the static shiv's going to cost more, and the Infinity Edge is going to cost more. You're going to get a little more crit out of it. So I think what they're doing here is they're making it a lot weaker. So crit builds are going to be a lot weaker at one item, significantly weaker at two items, and then they're going to stabilize at the third item and perhaps be even stronger. Now, on some champions that have unique interactions with crit, such as Caitlyn's headshot mechanic, where that headshot benefited from Infinity Edge, so she just had crazy synergy with Infinity Edge, this is definitely going to hurt her. But people who wouldn't mind that extra true damage on their hits, I don't know. It'll be interesting. So I think basically it's going to be a lot weaker at one item, significantly weaker at two, and then either stabilize or be stronger at three items. So yeah, that's kind of my prognosis here. So I think ultimately that's going to push a lot of the triple crit out, even though it'll be better at three items. I think the game's just getting a lot faster by design, because assassins are getting so strong, and you have to be able to keep up with assassins. If you don't remember what happens to AD carries in an assassin meta, it basically comes down to like who has the fastest single item power spike and who has really good utility. So that, because fights are over so fast, you don't need to have the massive damage. So champions that are really good in AD carry champions that are good in assassin metas are typically things like Ezreal, Ashe, Jhin. Those are pretty much it, because they hit their power spike off of one item and they can be pretty strong, like potentially Draven. So the scaling champs are going to have a harder time anyways off of this. So I think that like Caitlyn, Jinx, and Trist are definitely going to fall. Trist has already fallen a lot. You know, that 525 range is a big deal. Caitlyn is going to get knocked down a little bit. She's still going to be super strong early. I just don't know an alternate build that she can go. I guess she can still get like BF Sword static early. Maybe she goes back to Bloodthirster. That seems really awkward. I don't know. We'll have to see, because they're changing around so many items. But these will definitely be weaker with their current builds. There might be another like iteration of how these champs itemize, but they really, really need that sort of critical strike interaction. That's their thing. It could help champions that can build heavy AD that don't necessarily have to have critical strike. So, I don't know. Jhin is kind of an interesting case because he really wants to get those crits, but he also gets huge bonuses off of just having flat AD. So he gets a bonus to his AD. So I think the new Essence Reaver will be really good on Jhin, which we'll talk about here in a second. So you might see him go something like just Essence Reaver, Bloodthirster, Death's Dance, or just like huge AD build or something like that, and just forget the critical strike. Now they changed that one item to where it doesn't guarantee a crit anymore, which we'll talk about that item here in a second. They changed the way that functions. But yeah, I mean, maybe you just see that now. Maybe you just see, you know, Jhin go something like a Essence Reaver, Death's Dance, Ginsu's, or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with him, because he doesn't benefit that heavily from the attack speed, but he likes the crit. And there's not really a... I don't think there's a crit item that's also AD that doesn't have attack speed on it. That would be interesting to look at. I don't think that exists, though. So, I don't know. Jin's an interesting case. Xayah, you know, you might see something like, you know, the heavy build. Like I said before, I think Essence Reaver will be very good on Xayah. So you might see something like, you know, once again, like an Essence Reaver, Death's Dance, or maybe you could see even like Essence Reaver, Blade the Ruined King, that type of hybrid build come back. Essence Reaver, Blade, Ginsu's on her. Draven, I think, pretty comfortably can go very heavy AD because he scales off a... I mean, sometimes he does that anyways. So you could see something like a Death's Dance, Bloodthirster, you know, Draven type of build. That would be interesting. And then Ezreal, of course, is going to be one of the massive beneficiaries here. Everyone already loves Ezreal. But yeah, he's going to be huge because he never gets those Zeal items anyways. I think he would like the new Essence Reaver. Not 100% about that, because it gives a lot of extra attack speed. It does lower his cooldowns when he attacks, which would allow him to Q more and blink more. So yeah, I think he would like that. I'm not sure where he would slot that in. He's going to like the lower cost on Blade the Ruined King for sure. So, I don't know. You might see him go something like either Trinity or Iceborne Gauntlet, Muramana into the Storm Surge or whatever I think it's called. What is that item called? Or no, Essence Reaver, not Storm Surge. Into Essence Reaver and then into Blade the Ruined King. He's going to like the new Mortal Reminder buffs, so that'll be good. But yeah, here's the new Essence Reaver. So it's 20% cooldown reduction. It's only 3,200 gold, which is great. And then now it refunds 1% of your missing mana on hit, which is very good on mana-using champions like Ezreal. And then after you cast your ultimate, your next basic attack within 10 seconds grants you this. You gain 30% attack speed, and your basic attacks refund 20% of your missing non-cooldown ultimates. So that could be very good on Ezreal. Obviously, like, the biggest thing that people are going to talk about is Lucian with this. I think Master Yi is already really overpowered. I'm not going to talk about him that much. I'm focusing on AD carries. But yeah, it'd obviously be very good on Master Yi. But the other person is Lucian, because I believe each one of his attacks would trigger this, the basic attack. So his little double attack would trigger this twice, I think. So I think he's going to be able to just zip around with his E and just, like, constantly cast Qs and Es and just, like, fly all over in a team fight. So I don't know. We might see Lucian go for something like the classic, you know, Essence Reaver, Blade the Ruined King, and then maybe even like Black Cleaver or Trinity Force or something like that. It would be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I think people that go heavy AD that don't necessarily have to have a crit item or a lot of attack speed could benefit from this, or someone who can sub out a Blade the Ruined King, like a Xayah perhaps, could get this. So we'll see. Blade the Ruined King is a really, really powerful rush item historically, because it has that active that gives you the extra 100 on-hit damage. So it's a flat 100 magic damage, which is very good early and doesn't mean as much later. And you get the extra movement speed to help you run people down. Now, this would be particularly good with Xayah as well, because it slows them down, so they can't dodge out of your feathers as easily. Just the reason you don't get this on Xayah right now is that the crit build is so good because it scales with her E. That you couldn't get it. But actually, hold on. Let me look at Xayah real quick. Now that I'm thinking about this. How does this read? Because if you get to 120% crit off of Infinity Edge... Okay, it doesn't overscale. It's like, maybe if you get more crit than normal, you would actually do more damage on your E. But no. But the reason you don't get this on Xayah is because she doesn't have special on-hit interactions that would benefit from that. And she really wants crit for her E. But now that crit's kind of getting gutted, you might actually see someone go for something like a Blade the Ruined King, Essence Reaver, Ginsu's, or something on her. It could be a pretty interesting build. So these are kind of up in the air. I think Ezreal's definitely a winner, and I think these will come up with new builds that could ultimately make them winners. I think the obvious, like, clear winners are going to be people who don't interact with crit at all that are on-hit users. So, like, Kog'Maw, Kai'Sa, Varus, because they don't get crit anyways. You know, they end up getting Gensus and on-hit stuff, like either Gensus and Nashers or Wits End or, you know, Blade the Ruined King or whatever. They just don't really get a lot of crit stuff. Kaisa does have a build where she would go, you know, like Essence Reaver, Hurricane, but I don't think she's going to do that anymore. She might, so she'd probably get the new Essence Reaver, but she could go, you know, like Essence Reaver, Gensus, and then some other stuff and be fine. Twitch might go back to an on-hit build, which is why I have him here. People forget about this, but before, Twitch almost always used to get Blade the Ruined King anyways, because each one of his ultimate people that he hits triggers that. So when he pops his ult and he shoots 3 people with it, they all trigger the Blade the Ruined King passive, which is massive. And then I think there's definitely a space maybe for him to go something like a Gensus. He doesn't have AP ratios in his kit, but getting that extra on-hit to stack would be really nice. Getting some, I mean, maybe even something like Essence Reaver, it sounds bad, but you would be able to double Contaminate in a fight after you did that. If you keep hitting people, then you could cast Contaminate twice because it would lower the cooldown by a lot. That would give you a lot of extra burst, but I don't know. Twitch is kind of an odd duck. We'll see what he does. He really wants Hurricane, so I don't know. You might see like a Hurricane, Blade the Ruined King, and then just kind of go from there type of build. Maybe he still gets Infinity Edge after that. I don't know. And then, like, the Bork users will definitely be back, probably. So, like, Lucian, Essence Reaver, Blade the Ruined King definitely seems good. Ash really likes that. She doesn't benefit that heavily from crit. She gets more of a slow. And historically, she has really liked Blade the Ruined King. You might see something like Black Cleaver come back, although I doubt it. Maybe. Then, of course, Ezreal and maybe Twitch coming back. Favorable interaction with Gensus. Now, one sort of neat interaction that I hadn't really thought about, that I haven't seen anyone talk about, is the interaction between Trinity and Gensus. So Trinity says, after using an ability, your next basic attack deals this much on hit. And then Gensus, I think I have Gensus pulled up here. We need to wrap this up here in about 5 minutes or so. But yeah, Gensu states every other basic attack will trigger on-hit effects an additional time. So what happens then if you auto-attack, use an ability that triggers Trinity, like, say, a Quirky Rocket, and then auto-attack for that second time when you proc Trinity? Does Trinity proc twice? Because Trinity is classified as an on-hit. It's not on attack, it's on hit. Next basic attack triggers on hit, and this explicitly said on hit abilities trigger twice. So would you be able to get a double Trinity proc? Which, by the way, would be absolutely nuts damage. 400% base AD. What? I mean, you'd be like Trinitying somebody for like the Trinity proc itself. It would just be like astronomical, right? So if your base AD is like 100, you'd get like a 400 Trinity proc. Would that work? Now, Quirky also does have, you know, AP ratios on his abilities. They're not very high, but he could, in theory, go something like Gensu's. That's a little weird. He wants to be more of a burst champion, but I think that he would definitely like Essence Reaver, you know, because, and keep in mind, Essence Reaver is, it says there's a bare minimum of 30 seconds, so he can't trigger this passive every time he rockets, but he can trigger it every 30 seconds very reliably. So, you know, he would get the cooldown reduction. He loves that. If he gets this with Trinity, he'd have 40%. His basic attacks give 1% mana. Great. He's a huge mana hog. After you cast your ultimate, your next basic attack basically gives you 30% attack speed, and your basic attacks refund 20% of your remaining non-cooldown ults. So that would give you, you know, more rockets, more, like, little bombs with your Q. It would give you a lot more cool stuff to play with if you're in a fight and you're landing a lot of autos. So I think that, you know, maybe Quirky comes back with this. Maybe the game slows down enough where he could go something like Trinity, Essence Reaver, you know, potentially Gensu's or something like that bottom. Maybe that is something that's possible. So, you know, we might see Quirky back. He could also do something like that in the mid lane, potentially. And he does AP damage. That's really nice if you have an all-AD team and you have the option to pick up Corki. That would be nice. Right now, Kog'Maw is really the only viable like AP hitter bot lane if your whole team is AD, but maybe this would bring Corki back in. So I don't know about that Trinity Essence interaction. Gensu's. Yeah, Trinity Essence Gensu on Corki. That could be interesting. And the Essence changes will definitely help. I think Lucian, Ashe, Xayah, for sure, they will like that. They have so many cool abilities. Like Xayah being able to lower the cooldown on pulling her feathers back in with Blade Caller and being able to activate her W more. I mean, that item's just going to be a grand slam on her. She's going to love that. She already likes the current version. This is even better for that type of thing. Sivir's kind of iffy. This would give her more ricochets, though. So Sivir might like it. The mana regen would certainly be a welcome addition to her. And then I think Ashe would like it. I mean, cooldown reduction, Ashe is always going to love that because she just wants more arrows. I don't know which ability she would spam. I guess she could spam her her W more, maybe. I'm not sure how her focus works. I'm not going to look her up right now, but Ashe might benefit from it as well. So likely it's going to be an overall nerf for like the damage for some AD carries, I think, but I'm not even sure after doing the math whether it's that bad for crit champions. They're going to be stronger at 3 items, but they're weaker early, so it's just going to clarify crit as very late game, heavy hitting, tank busting champions, right? And then this is going to allow earlier champions who want to rush something like Blade the Ruined King to come back into the fold. So I think a lot of the Gensu users might start rushing Blade again. Just go Blade Gensus. Gensus has always been great with Blade because the on-hit from the Gensus, like, you have Blade the Ruined King gives you AD, which scales the Gensus. It gives you lifesteal, which is nice. It's great early on for sustain, especially because they're nerfing, sustain here with less health regen. And then you get that double attack twice off of the Gensus, which triggers the Blade hit twice on a single target. So I think that might be kind of what a lot of the strong champions are doing. You might see some champions rushing Essence Reaver, although, maybe that comes into play second or third. But like I said, Blade is such a tempting... Blade the Ruined King is such a tempting brush as a first item because you get that sustain in lane, and you get this magic damage that's very relevant early and falls off later. So I think we might be going back to the Blade Rush meta and then just figure it out from there. Like Blade Gensus, Blade Essence Reaver, something like that. So that would be maybe step one. You might see the Gensu users, like I said, kind of come back into play. Kog'Maw and things like that. But Kog'Maw might even rush Blade the Ruined King and then go Gensus afterward. I mean, it does give good, like, attack damage, all of this stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be an interesting change. I think it'll increase the diversity of champions quite a bit. Okay, and then finally, just the rune changes, then we'll end it up here. So, yeah, I think it's going to be good. Couple other things. Nice buff to GA. People probably still won't get it a lot. The buff to the armor penetration is going to be nice for killing squishies. So, you might see this as a third item again. People, especially like Jhin. People who want to go for the hard-hitting stuff early, like Draven, Jhin. People who might go, like, Essence Reaver, Death's Dance, and then Mortal Reminder or something like that. Zadie, no. Might like this. The cat's trying to eat my food here that I need to eat. So, we'll see. It's interesting. Bloodthirster is more viable. It's 3,500 gold now. I still think that Death's Dance is probably a better choice. They have similar AD. Death's Dance just has the CDR and better protection mechanisms than Bloodthirster, so I still think that Death's Dance is just strictly a better version of Bloodthirster, but maybe this will help it come into play. 3,500 is a lot, though. I think people, if you want the lifesteal, Blade the Ruined King is going to be the place to go for a lot of champs, except for the people like Draven, maybe, who have the huge AD ratios. Wallbound Mortius will actually be a pretty decent buy against burst AP mages, which is curious. I mean, the extra 10 AD is pretty big. You might see this as a niche item. I still think that Quicksilver Sash is better in a lot of those cases, but this will become, a good viable alternative to either Guardian Angel or Blade the Ruined King. Hail Blades, this isn't going to matter. No one's going to get this, I don't think. It's like your next 3 attacks do a little bit of extra damage. The problem is a lot of AD carries really want to go down the precision tree because they get all the extra attack speed. They get Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Triumph. There's so many good things in that tree, and there's just not a lot of good things for AD carries in the in this tree, right? Like, you might see some non-AD carry users get this. I just don't really see how this competes with Press the Attack and Conquer, even on non-AD carry champions. So, I don't know. Like this is really good for trading in lane. If you have like a 3-hit good trade, like you could maybe see this on a Vayne or something. You can just go in, get your 3 hits, and then roll back out. But it's just weird because you have to go in and out of combat, so it would only be good in like the laning phase. Yeah, the secondary tree with like sudden impact. If you can't use sudden impact, the secondary tree is pretty bad. Like, the eyeball collector tree is just not enough power for a lot of those champions. And then they're not going to be using Ingenious Hunter or Relentless Hunter that much in the bottom tree. So I don't know. It's okay, but as a keystone, I think it's a bit much. If it was just a secondary rune, maybe, but cheap shot, not going to matter. A lot of champions just can't trigger this enough in the laning phase. This is really nice for Ingenious Hunter. It just has more power up front, but it's the same 40% when it's fully stacked. Ultimate Hunter, I just don't think is going to get used very much here. Maybe, like, someone who really wants their ult that's going into this tree, who's going to get Predator or something like that. So, like, maybe like a Rengar or Skarner, maybe Olaf. Something like that. Like, these champs would like this. This would be pretty cool, Ultimate Hunter, but I think a lot of people aren't going to get this as a secondary. I was really hoping it wasn't going to compete with Ingenious Hunter. Like, I had heard a rumor they might put Ulti Hat up here in this tree with Cheap Shot. But now it competes with Ingenious Hunter, which is the best reason to go into this tree domination for a lot of supports especially, so it sucks that it's not, because I was really looking forward to having more ultimates, more items, and all that stuff. I thought that would be cool, but as it stands, very few champs are going to get that. There might be a couple. Demolish, interesting, not really going to shake it up. Bone Plating still going to be your best bet. They are nerfing Bone Plating to where it's blocking less damage, which is good. It's interesting, nerfing Chrysalis, that's good, and they're nerfing Fleet Footwork. Now, Phase Shift is another one that's it's like going to be very good on Aurelion Soul, but I don't know like who else would really use this that much. There's like a couple maybe like Swain. I don't know. It's interesting. It needs a buff. I like it. It's not going to affect a lot of meta champions, but Nimbus Cloak, I just don't think this is going to be used a lot. Maybe. And once again, there will be a couple of niche champions that will like this. I would have to think about it. I'm sure there'll be somebody this will be really good on at some point. It has an internal cooldown of 60 seconds, so once again, you can't do like a Corki kind of thing where you just cast your bomb and then do it. So they, always had those internal cooldowns in there. So it'd be someone where you want to cast your ult and just like run in to engage. And you like have a really powerful ult. I mean, I immediately think of something like a Darius or a Skarner, but they don't use their ults in that way. Something like a Malphite doesn't need that to close the gap. Like maybe Fiora, but maybe Fiora or something. But what does she get? She doesn't get anything in this tree. She could get it as a secondary. I don't know. Maybe there's a couple of champs that would like something like this, but it seems a little weird. We'll see. I'm sure someone will be good with it. And then Perfect Timing, it still competes with Boots, so I think it's fairly balanced. And they're changing a lot of stuff about the jungle. I don't want to go into all that timing-wise. It'll be fine. But anyways, that's going to be it for this kind of like just quick PBE update video. Hopefully you found it useful. I was trying to keep it to an hour, but, it's going to be an hour 8. But I did want to spend a lot of time not just saying, hey, 80 items are changing, but talking about, hey, I think these are the kinds of things that might come in to focus. And obviously when the real patch notes come out with these real numbers, then I'll have all the breakdowns for you with like some really cool... I might do a separate video just for 80 carries where I talk about a bunch of cool new builds and things like that when this comes out. But yeah, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.